The twin sons of Zifra shone brightly over the royal palace. The tall crystal towers glimmered like ice in the warm light. Inside, the air smelled of sweet flowers that floated in the gardens, and soft hums of energy crystals powered every hall. Princess. Lyra walked quickly through the long corridor toward the grand throne room. Her silver robe brushed against the polished floor as she held her breath. Today her father, King Voran, had called her for an important talk, but she already knew what it was about, and she did not like it. Her heart beat fast. She had heard the news a human warrior had arrived on Zephora. Not just any human, but the one called Kael Varen, a fighter from Earth who had battled in the Outer Rim Wars. The stories about him were terrifying. Humans were said to be unpredictable, dangerous, and capable of defeating enemies far stronger than themselves. And now, this human was here. In her home, she reached the tall golden doors. 2 guards bowed and let her enter. Inside, King Voran sat on his throne, wearing his royal blue armor and holding his crystal staff. His eyes, deep and wise, looked up as she approached. "Lyra, my daughter," he said warmly, "you have heard the news." Lyra took a deep breath and stepped closer. "Yes, father, the human has arrived, and I must tell you, I don't want to meet him." The king raised one brow. "Why?" Her voice trembled. "Because humans are warriors who fight without fear. They destroy fleets and tear down fortresses. She stopped, afraid her words sounded too childish. "They also save worlds," her father said, his voice calm but firm. "Kael Varen is here because Zephora faces danger. The enemy fleet has been spotted in our outer territories. They are moving toward us. This human warrior is here to help protect our people." Lyra shook her head. "But why him? We have our own soldiers. We have the Sky Guards, the Crystal Legion." King Voran leaned forward. "Our soldiers are brave, but this enemy is unlike any we have fought before. Napel has fought them before. He knows their weaknesses." Lyra's eyes widened. "Then he is even more dangerous. If he defeated such enemies, what could he do to us if he wished?" The king gave a deep sigh. "Lyra, you judge before you have seen. This is not wise." He tapped his staff on the floor, and the crystal at its top glowed softly. "Tomorrow you will meet him." Her chest tightened. "Father, please, not him. I am afraid of that human warrior." His voice grew firm. "Fear will not protect you, daughter. Understanding will. Go and prepare yourself. You will meet him as a princess of Zephora should, with dignity." She lowered her head, feeling the conversation was over. "Yes, father." But inside she was still full of dread. That night, Lyra could not sleep. The stars outside her window shimmered like silver dust, but they brought her no peace. She sat by the balcony, watching the city lights below. She thought about the humans she had read about in the palace records. Humans were strange. They came from a small blue planet, but had spread across the galaxy faster than many older races. They adapted to any environment, survived in harsh worlds, and always seemed to fight back, even when hopelessly outnumbered. Some saw them as heroes, others saw them as dangerous predators. Lyra had never met one in person. And tomorrow, she would meet the one they called the Blade of Orion. The very thought made her shiver. The next day, the palace was busy preparing for the meeting. Servants polished the crystal floors, placed banners of both Zifra and Earth side by side, and prepared the ceremonial table in the crystal courtyard. Lyra walked slowly toward the meeting place, her mind full of questions and fears. When she arrived, her father was already there, speaking with his advisors. The sound of heavy boots on the floor made her turn. He was here. Kael Varen entered the courtyard. Lyra's breath caught. He was taller than most Zyphrans, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to notice everything at once. His armor was not like theirs. It was made of dark steel, scratched in places from battles past. At his side hung a simple but sharp-looking blade. And yet, he did not walk like a brute. His steps were steady, calm. Kael stopped a few paces away from the throne and gave a respectful bow. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice deep but not harsh. "It is an honor to stand in your court," King Vorin smiled slightly. "Kael Vorin of Earth, Zephora welcomes you." Kael's gaze shifted briefly to Lyra. She stiffened, but he only gave a small nod, not forcing a greeting. "This is my daughter, Princess Lyra," the king said. "She will be working with you during your stay." Lyra's mouth went dry. "I welcome you to Zephora," she managed, though her voice was quiet. Kael inclined his head politely. "Thank you, Princess. I will do all I can to protect your world." The words sounded sincere, but Lyra kept her guard up. She noticed his eyes, sharp but not unkind. Still, she didn't trust them. The meeting began. Kael stood before a large hollow map of Zephyrus' outer territories, explaining where the enemy fleet might attack. He spoke clearly, without arrogance, and his ideas were practical. Even some of the king's generals looked impressed, but Lyra kept her distance, watching from behind the council table. She saw how he moved, how his hand rested near his sword knot, threatening but always ready. It was a reminder that this man was dangerous, even if he smiled politely. When the council ended, Kael approached her. "Princess," he said, his tone respectful, "I understand you may not be comfortable with my presence. I hope in time that changes." She forced a small smile. "You fight wars, human. I do not think comfort will be easy." His lips curved, just slightly. "True, but I fight them so others can be comfortable." And with that, he stepped back and left the courtyard. Lyra stood there, uncertain. He had not been rude or aggressive. In fact, he had been careful. Still, the old stories of humans echoed in her mind. She could not decide whether her fear was foolish or wise. That night, she returned to her chambers. Lyra found herself thinking about his words. She remembered the way he looked at the hollow map knot, like a man eager for battle, but like one studying a puzzle he had to solve. Maybe her father was right, and she was judging too quickly. But then she remembered the scars on his armor and the stories of his victories. No matter how polite he seemed, Kael Vorin was still a warrior. And warriors were dangerous. And so, as the twin moons of Zephora rose into the sky, Princess Lyra made herself a promise. She would keep her eyes on the human. She would learn what he truly was. She would never, ever let her guard down. The morning light in Zephyrus' capital city was golden and soft. Long beams of sunlight passed through the palace's crystal windows, painting the floors with patterns of light. Princess Lyra stood in her private chamber watching the city. From her balcony, ships glided between tall crystal towers, their silver hulls shining in the sun. She should have felt at peace. Instead, her mind was full of the human warrior, Kael Vorin. She had met him yesterday. He had been polite, respectful even. But that did not erase what she knew. Humans were dangerous. She had seen old war recordings of human soldiers fighting, like wild storms, winning against fleets much larger than theirs. If Kael truly was the blade of Orion they spoke about, then he was more dangerous than most. Her door chimed. Servant stepped in, bowing low. "Princess, the king requests your presence in the training courtyard. The human warrior will be demonstrating his combat skills for the royal guard." Lyra's stomach tightened. "I see," she said, trying to hide her unease. "Tell the king I will be there." The training courtyard was wide and open, surrounded by tall crystal walls. The ground was covered in pale sand, and racks of weapons lined one side. The royal guards stood in neat rows, their blue and silver armor shining in the morning light. King Vorin sat on a raised seat at the far end, his advisors beside him. Kael was already in the center of the courtyard, speaking with the captain of the guard. He wore no helmet, but his armor was secured tightly, and a long sword rested in his right hand. Lyra walked slowly to her father's side, sitting on a seat just beside his. "You came?" King Vorin said with a small smile. "I said I would," Lyra replied, her tone calm. She kept her eyes on the human warrior, studying him. The demonstration began. The captain of the guard stepped forward with a long crystal spear. "We will begin with a simple attack sequence," he said. Kale nodded. As you wish. The captain lunged forward with surprising speed. Kale moved even faster. His sword met the spear with a sharp clang, then slid along it, knocking it aside. The movement was smooth, controlled, and finished in less than 2 seconds. The guards murmured quietly. The captain tried again, attacking from different angles. Each time, Kale blocked, sidestepped, or redirected the strike. His movements were efficient, there was no wasted motion. Lyra frowned. She had expected wild, aggressive swings. Instead, he moved like water flowing, calm yet unstoppable. Notice. His control, King Vorin said softly to her. A dangerous man does not need to be careless. Next, Kale faced 2 guards at once. They circled him, trying to catch him from both sides. Kale's eyes never stopped moving. He let them come close, then shifted aside at the last moment, turning their attacks against each other. Within moments, both guards were disarmed, their weapons lying in the sand. Kale lowered his sword. Your guards are skilled, he said, breathing evenly. But they rely too much on the weapon's reach. If the enemy gets too close, they will struggle. The captain of the guard nodded slowly. You're right. Few could see that so quickly. Finally, the captain brought out a training drone, an advanced machine designed to mimic enemy fighters. The drone was fast and unpredictable, firing light pulses and striking with mechanical arms. Kale faced it without hesitation. The drone shot forward, its arms swinging. Kale sidestepped, his sword striking one arm and disabling it. The drone spun and attacked again, but Kale ducked, rolled, and came up behind it. In 3 precise strikes, the drone powered down and fell still. The courtyard was silent for a moment. Then the guards began to clap their hands against their armor, a sign of respect. Lyra watched him carefully. She could not deny it, his skill was remarkable. But it was more than skill. There was a patience to the way he moved, a focus in his eyes. He fought not like a man showing off, but like someone who had fought too many battles to waste energy. Still, she reminded herself, control did not mean harmless. Kale bowed slightly to the king. Your Majesty, thank you for allowing me to demonstrate. King Vorin smiled. You have impressed my guard. That is not easily done. Kale glanced toward Lyra. And you, Princess? What do you think? She met his eyes, her voice steady. I think you are exactly as skilled as the stories say. There was a faint, unreadable smile on his lips. Then I hope in time you will see I am more than just a story. After the demonstration, the king asked Kale to walk with Lyra through the palace gardens. She did not like the idea, but she could not refuse. The gardens were quiet, full of glowing flowers and soft streams of water. They walked side by side, though she kept a small distance between them. You do not trust me, Kale said suddenly, his tone calm. Lyra glanced at him. I do not trust any human warrior. He did not look offended. That is fair. But may I ask why? She hesitated. Because humans fight too hard. You do not stop, even when it seems hopeless. That can be dangerous. Kale nodded slowly. It can be. But sometimes, fighting when hope is gone is the only reason anyone survives. She frowned. You make it sound noble. Not noble, he said. Necessary. They walked in silence for a moment. Lyra studied his profile-sharp features, eyes that seemed to carry weight. She wondered what battles he had seen. As they reached a small bridge over a pond, Kale stopped. His eyes shifted toward the palace walls. What is it? Lyra asked. Someone is watching us, he said quietly. She turned her head slightly. And sure enough, high on one of the walls, a shadow moved. Palace guards? No, Kale shook his head. Not one of yours. Too still, too careful. Before she could react, Kale moved toward the wall with quick, silent steps. The shadow vanished. Moments later, the alarm bells rang. They returned to the courtyard where the guards were gathering. The captain reported that an intruder had been spotted near the outer wall but had escaped. No one knew how they got in. Kale's jaw tightened. Scouts, he said. The enemy is closer than you think. King Vorin's expression grew serious. Increase the patrols. And Kale, can you track them? Yes, Kale said. But I will need someone who knows the city well. His gaze turned toward Lyra, her eyes widened. Me, you know the hidden paths better than anyone, Kale said simply. And if the scouts came here once, they will try again. She hesitated. The thought of working directly with him made her uneasy, but she could see the king watching, waiting for her answer. Finally, she nodded. Very well. That night, Lyra and Kale moved through the city's shadowed streets. The bright crystal towers looked different in the dark, less like a dream, more like a silent forest of glass. Kale moved quietly, scanning every corner, while Lyra guided him through hidden walkways only the royal family knew. They found signs, almost invisible marks on the walls, left by the intruder to mark a path. Lyra knelt to study one. This is toward the river docks, she whispered. Kale nodded. Let's move. When they reached the docks, they saw it a small stealth ship, half hidden under the shadow of a cargo platform. Two figures in dark armor were loading something aboard. Lyra recognized the armor design. It belonged to the Vrak Syndicate, mercenary group known for selling information to the highest bidder. Kale's hand rested on his sword. Stay here, he said quietly. She grabbed his arm. Wait, if you attack, they will flee. We should trap them. He studied her for a moment, then gave a short nod. All right, show me. They moved quickly, blocking the ship's exit with heavy cargo containers. The mercenaries noticed. They tried to run, but Kale intercepted them. He didn't strike, too killingly to disarm and pin them down. Lyra stepped forward, her voice strong. You will tell us who sent you. One of the mercenaries laughed bitterly. You already know. Kale's eyes narrowed. The enemy fleet. The mercenary smiled, but said nothing more. The guards arrived and took them away. As they walked back toward the palace, Lyra found herself looking at Kale differently. He had listened to her plan. He had not rushed in blindly. He had fought with precision, not cruelty. You did well, Kale said. She raised a brow. You sound surprised. I am not, he said simply. You are the king's daughter, expected. You too, be clever. For the first time, Lyra almost smiled. Perhaps I was wrong about you, human. He glanced at her. Perhaps that night Lyra lay in bed, unable to sleep. She thought about how Kale had moved in the shadows, how he had trusted her guidance, how his eyes had sharpened at the first sign of danger. He was still dangerous, that much was true. But maybe, just maybe, he was dangerous in the right way. And somewhere deep inside, she began to wonder if her fear was starting to change. The skies over Zephora had never looked so dark. The twin suns, which usually bathed the city in warm gold, were hidden behind thick clouds that swirled with unnatural energy. A cold wind blew through the crystal towers, carrying a scent of smoke and metal. The royal palace was tense. Alarms echoed across the city. Princess Lyra stood at the balcony, her silver robe clinging to her as she watched the horizon. Ships, unlike the peaceful city traffic, streaked through the sky in sharp, aggressive formations. Red and black silhouettes of alien warcraft glimmered with deadly energy. The enemy had arrived. King Vorin appeared behind her, his face serious, but calm. Lyra, he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. The fleet you saw in the scouting reports has reached Zephora's outer orbit. They will strike the city within the hour. Lyra's heart pounded. We are ready, father, he nodded. Our people are prepared, but this is unlike anything we have faced before. Kale Veron's skills will be vital. She swallowed hard, thinking of the human warrior. Until now, he had been impressive in controlled training, but facing a real attack, facing death in the streets. Would he still be the same? Before she could dwell on it, a message arrived via crystal communicator. The commander of the palace guard's voice was urgent. Your Majesty, enemy ships are attempting to breach the southern perimeter. We require Kale Veron immediately. King. Vorin turned to Lyra. Go with him. Your knowledge of the palace's secret passages could save lives. Lyra's stomach twisted, but she nodded. Yes, father. Kale waited in the courtyard, his armor gleaming even in the dim light. Sword was at his side. and his expression was focused. He did not smile. There was no time for that now. He nodded to Lyra. "Are you ready?" Lyra took a deep breath. I think so." Together they moved quickly toward the southern walls. The streets were chaotic. Citizens ran to shelters, warning bells clanged, and sky-patrolled drones darted. Overhead, the enemy had already begun attacking the outer districts, firing pulses of energy that left glowing scars on the crystal buildings. Kale led Lyra through hidden alleyways, avoiding the main roads, moved with precision, but she noticed how his eyes constantly scanned every angle, every shadow. His calmness amidst the chaos made her feel safer, though she would never admit it aloud. When they reached the southern perimeter, they saw the first wave of enemy troops, heavily armored alien soldiers, with strange glowing weapons she had never seen. They were fast, ruthless, and methodical. One misstep could cost a life. Kale crouched behind a large crate. "Stay close," he whispered. "We need to disable their command drone first. It coordinates their troops." Lyra nodded. Had studied the layouts with her father's generals before, but now it was real. Her hands trembled slightly, but Kale's steady presence gave her courage. They moved forward, slipping past enemy patrols. Kale's movements were smooth and precise. Lyra followed his lead, trusting his instincts. When a soldier turned a corner, Kale neutralized him with a swift, non-lethal strike, just enough to knock him out without causing permanent harm. Lyra's heart raced. She had never seen anyone fight like this. At last they reached the command drone. It hovered above a tall spire, directing enemy troops with red energy beams. Kale studied it for a moment. "I need you to climb the structure, Lyra," he said. "You know the way. I'll cover you." She hesitated. "Alone?" "Not alone. I'll handle anyone who comes near," he reassured her. "Go." Lyra took a deep breath and moved. She climbed carefully, remembering every secret ledge and rope her father had taught her. Kale's eyes never left the street below, his sword ready to strike at a moment's notice. Finally, she reached the top. The command drone's energy core glowed fiercely. She pressed her hand against it, feeling the hum of power. "Kale, it's ready to shut down." "Do it," he called. With a firm push, she disabled the drone. The red beams vanished, and enemy troops paused, confused. Kale took the moment to strike. He moved like a storm, disarming enemies and pushing them back, his sword flashing in precise motions. Lyra watched, amazed and terrified at the same time. The first wave of attackers retreated, but Lyra knew it was only the beginning. From the sky, larger warships appeared, firing beams that tore through the palace walls. Civilians screamed and ran while the palace defenders tried to respond. Kale grabbed Lyra's hand. "We need to get back inside.
Oh.
There's more to protect." She followed him through the palace corridors, where chaos now reigned. Broken crystal pillars, fallen banners, and injured citizens filled the halls. Kale helped guide the injured to safety, never losing focus on the approaching threat. Lyra realized something surprising. Despite his strength, Kale did not fight for glory or dominance. He fought for others. They reached the main courtyard, where the enemy had begun a heavy assault. Kale drew his sword, motioning for Lyra to stand. Behind him, "Watch carefully," he said. Strength is nothing without strategy. He faced the attackers directly, blocking their strikes with precise movements, redirecting their energy pulses, and even using parts of the environment to his advantage. Lyra could not help but gasp at his skill. Each enemy he faced seemed almost impossible to overcome, yet he managed it with calm, almost effortless control. Amid the chaos, Lyra noticed something that made her blood run cold. A group of enemy soldiers had slipped past the front line and were heading straight toward the royal treasury. Inside were ancient relics and energy crystals that powered Zifra. If the intruders succeeded, the entire city would be vulnerable. "Kale," she shouted, "the treasury. They're going for the treasury." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Lead me there." Lyra ran ahead, showing him hidden corridors and passages only the royal family knew. They reached the treasury just as the enemy was about to break in. Kale moved first, intercepting the soldiers with swift strikes. He disarmed them without unnecessary harm, keeping the fight controlled. Lyra found herself assisting, using quick thinking to block exits and confuse the attackers. Together, they managed to drive the enemy back, securing the treasury. Lyra could not believe what she had just done, fighting alongside a human warrior and surviving. When the immediate threat passed, Kale and Lyra stood among the rubble, catching their breath. The courtyard was scarred, some crystal pillars broken, but the city's heart remained safe. Kale's eyes scanned the horizon. "This was just the first wave," he said. "More will come, and they'll be stronger." Lyra nodded. "Then we fight together." Kale looked at her, surprise flashing in his eyes. You are not afraid anymore." She shook her head. "I am afraid, but not of you." He raised an eyebrow, a faint smile forming. "Not of me?" "No," she said firmly. "You fight. To protect, not to harm. That makes a difference." For the first time, Kale seemed relaxed. "Good, then you are learning quickly." As night fell, the city's defenders regrouped. Kale helped the wounded, guided the guards, and coordinated defenses with King Vorin. Lyra stayed close, watching him work. She realized something she had not before. Humans were not only strong, they were adaptable, intelligent, and brave in ways Zephora had never seen. For the first time, she began to see the human warrior not as a threat, but as an ally. And perhaps she thought someone she could trust, maybe even respect. The twin moons rose above Zephora, casting silver light over the city. From the palace balcony, Lyra looked at Kale standing below, preparing for the next wave of attacks. Her heart still pounded, but it was no longer filled. Only with fear now, it carried a spark of admiration, a growing curiosity. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Princess Lyra believed that, together with the human warrior, they might just save Zephora. The morning after the first attack, Zephora was alive with activity. Palace guards patrolled every street, citizens repaired broken walkways, and repair droids buzzed through the city like swarms of glowing insects. Yet beneath the surface of recovery, tension hung like a cloud. The enemy fleet had not left. They were regrouping. Waiting for the next strike, Princess Lyra stood in the palace courtyard, her silver robe brushing against the polished crystal tiles. She watched as Kale Varen inspected the defensive positions. Of the city with King Vorin's generals, her heart still beat quickly when she saw him in action. But now it was a mixture of awe and respect rather than pure fear. Kale noticed her watching. He approached, a faint smile on his face. "Princess, come with me. I want to show you something." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "Lead the way." They walked through a narrow corridor that led to the palace gardens. The sun glimmered off the crystal trees, casting fractured light across their path. For the first time since the attacks began, the gardens were quiet, almost peaceful. Kale stopped at a secluded spot near a small fountain. "These walls are old," he said. "They hide many secrets, don't they?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. My father taught me all the hidden paths, secret doors, and escape routes. Not many people know them." "I can see why," Kale said. "They could save lives in an emergency." Lyra looked at him closely. "And you? You already know how to move through enemy territory without being seen. How do you learn that so quickly?" Kale shrugged. "Observation and adaptation. Humans survive by learning fast and trusting their instincts. Sometimes you just have to move without thinking, then adjust as the world changes around you." Lyra considered this. Humans, she realized, were not like Zephrins. Zephrins planned, calculated, and often hesitated when uncertainty appeared. Humans acted and then adapted. That made them dangerous, yes, but also valuable allies. Over the next few days, Kale worked closely with the palace defenders. Lyra insisted on accompanying him, despite her earlier fear. She wanted to see the human warrior in action, and more importantly, to understand him. During drills and strategic planning sessions, Lyra began to notice small things about Kale. How he listened more than he spoke, how he noticed details others missed, how he treated everyone, guards, citizens, and even prisoners, with fairness and respect. One afternoon, as they walked through the training halls, Kale paused. "Princess, you have a sharp mind. You plan moves in seconds that most would take." "Minutes to see?" Lyra blinked. I just watch carefully. It is not the same as fighting." "Perhaps," Kale said. "Strategy is more than fighting. It is understanding the battlefield, predicting the enemy, and knowing your allies. You are learning quickly." She felt warmth in her chest, not from pride, but from trust. For the first time, she believed Kale was not just a warrior, he was someone she could rely on. That evening, while the city slept under a moonlit sky, a quiet alarm sounded in the palace. Kale and Lyra were already on patrol. "What is it?" Lyra whispered, her voice tense. Kale scanned the courtyard. Movement near the eastern gate. "Someone is sneaking in." Lyra led the way through the hidden corridors. They reached the gate and saw two figures attempting to scale the walls. Their armor was dark and unmarked, a sign of a covert mission, not a full attack. Kale's eyes narrowed. "Stay back," he said. "I'll handle them." But Lyra shook her head. "Me help. We can trap them together." Kale studied her, then nodded. "All right, but follow my lead." They moved quietly, using shadows and hidden ledges. Lyra guided Kale through passages the intruders did not know. When they reached the courtyard, Kale blocked one escape route. While Lyra used quick thinking to corner the other, Kale fought with precision, striking only to disable. Lyra followed his example, using her agility to block exits and prevent the intruders from fleeing. Within moments, the intruders were captured. Kale turned to her, impressed. "You are learning fast, Princess. Faster than I expected." Lyra felt a blush rise to her cheeks. I just did what you did." "No," he said gently. "You did what you thought was right. That is bravery." For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to smile. She felt a connection growing, a trust. That went beyond fear, beyond duty. Over the following days, Kale and Lyra worked even closer together. He taught her small combat techniques not to fight him, but to defend herself if needed. They studied the enemy's movements, sharing insights and ideas. During one quiet moment in the palace gardens, Lyra asked, "Kale, why do humans fight?" "So differently. They are fast, strong, fearless." Kale leaned against a tree, thinking, "Humans fight because they must. We survive in a harsh world. But we fight to protect, not to dominate. Fear is part of it, yes, but courage comes from knowing someone depends on you." Lyra considered this. Humans were not like the Ziphrans, who relied on magic and technology. Humans relied on instinct, heart, and strategy. And somehow, it worked. Their bond grew stronger when they discovered a hidden traitor within the palace. One of the advisors had been secretly signaling enemy scouts, giving them information about Zephyra's defenses. Lyra had noticed subtle signs, the way the advisor avoided certain rooms, coded messages hidden in reports. Kale recognized the patterns that explained how the traitor's movements could be predicted. Together, they devised a plan to catch the advisor in the act. Lyra led Kale through secret corridors. Kale covered the main halls. And when the advisor attempted to signal the enemy again, they were caught red-handed. King Vorin was impressed. "Lyra, you have grown strong in these past days." And Kale, "Your guidance has been invaluable." Kale bowed slightly. "Princess Lyra deserves all credit. She saw what others did not." Lyra felt a thrill of pride. The first time, she realized she was no longer just a frightened princess. She was a partner, learning, contributing, fighting alongside the human warrior. One evening, after a day of planning and drills, Kale and Lyra sat by the palace fountain. The moon reflected on the water, turning it into a silver mirror. "You have changed," Kale said softly. "When we first met, you were afraid of me. Now, you seem different." Lyra looked down at her hands. "I am afraid," she admitted, "but not of you. I've seen what humans can do, but also why they do it. You fight for others, not yourself. That makes a difference," Kale smiled faintly. "It does. And you. You are brave. I admire your courage. Not just in battle, but in your willingness to trust someone different. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had never felt this way before. Trust, admiration, respect, all wrapped into one. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not just a warrior, but someone she could rely on. Someone who made her feel stronger. The next day, Kale and Lyra were back in the field, inspecting outer defenses. The enemy fleet had returned larger and more organized. The palace defenders were ready, but the coming battle would test everyone's courage. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" Lyra nodded firmly. "I am ready. With you." He gave a short, approving nod. "Good. Together, then." As they prepared to face the next wave of attackers, Lyra felt a sense of calm she had never known. Fear was still there. Yes, but it was tempered with trust, understanding, and the bond she had formed with Kale. She realized in that moment that fear could be overcome, and sometimes it could even turn into strength. That night, as the twin moons of Zifra rose above the city, Lyra stood beside Kale on the palace balcony. Below them, the city stirred, ready for the enemy's next move. Kale looked at the horizon. "Tomorrow will be dangerous, but we have a chance together." Lyra met his gaze. "Yes, together." For the first time since the human warrior arrived, she felt hope. Not just for herself, not just for Zifra, but for the future they could build, humans and Zifrans. Side by side, and somewhere deep inside, she knew their bond was more than strategy or survival. It was trust, respect, and the beginning of something stronger than fear. The battle was not over. But with Kale at her side, Lyra felt ready to face whatever came next. The sky above Zephora turned a deep, unnatural red. Clouds twisted into spirals, and bolts of strange green lightning flashed across the horizon. From the palace balcony, Princess Lyra stood with her father, King Vorin, watching the enemy fleet approach. Massive dark ships pierced through the clouds like black arrows. They were shaped like blades, sharp and menacing, with glowing red eyes on their hulls. Behind them, hundreds of smaller craft swarmed, ready to attack. Lyra felt her heart beat faster. She had never seen such a sight in her life. Even in her dreams, battles had never looked so terrifying. Beside her, Kale tightened the strap of his armored vest. The human warrior stood tall, calm, and steady, as if this was not the first time he had seen a sight like this. His rifle was slung across his back, and a strange metal device glowed faintly on his wrist. "They will try to hit the palace first," Kale said in a steady voice. "They will want to destroy the leadership before the people can rally." Vorin's eyes narrowed.
Nice.
"Then we must hold the palace at all costs." Kale glanced at Lyra. "Not just the palace. We hold the people. If they lose hope, we lose everything." Lyra nodded slowly. In the past, she might have stayed behind, safe in the crystal halls. But after all that had happened, she couldn't just hide anymore. Preparing for the final battle, the palace guards rushed through the corridors, carrying energy spears and shield generators. The air was filled with the hum of weapons charging and the thud of boots against the polished floors. Kale moved quickly, giving short, precise orders to soldiers who had never taken commands from a human before. At first they hesitated, but his voice carried a confidence they could not ignore. "Keep the outer gates reinforced," he instructed. "If they breach those, fall back to the crystal courtyard. Do not fight in the open, unless you must. And remember, protect the civilians." First, Lyra stayed close, helping carry small energy cells to recharge the defense cannons. Every time Kale looked at her, he checked to make sure she was safe, but didn't tell her to hide. He knew she would not listen. The king's advisors rushed to him with panicked reports. The enemy fleet had started their descent. The palace defense cannons began firing beams of blue energy into the sky, hitting some of the smaller crafts. But the larger ships pushed forward. Then the first explosion shook the palace. The siege begins. A blast tore through the outer wall, sending shards of crystal flying. Guards raised shields to protect the civilians, who were being hurried into the inner chambers. Smoke and dust filled the air. Cale grabbed Lyra's arm. "Stay low. Follow me." They moved through the chaos as enemy soldiers stall. Armored warriors with glowing red visors poured into the courtyard. The Xiphrin guards fought bravely, but the invaders were relentless. Cale leapt forward, his rifle roaring with bursts of light. He didn't just shoot. He moved with precision, predicting enemy movements before they even made them. Every shot counted. Every step had purpose. Lyra followed, her hands trembling, but her mind sharp. She used her smaller energy blaster to cover Cale's side. She wasn't as skilled as him, but every time she hit an enemy, it gave the Xiphrin guards more breathing room. From the palace balcony, King Vorin shouted orders, rallying his people. "Stand your ground. Protect the heart of Zifra." The turning point, the battle raged for hours. The enemy ships hovered overhead, firing blasts that shook the ground. Palace walls began to crack. The defenders were being pushed back. Cale realized they couldn't just hold the palace forever. They need to cut off their command ship. He said to Lyra over the noise, "If we destroy their leader, the rest will scatter." Lyra's eyes widened. "But the command ship is in the center of their fleet." "That's why I need you," Cale replied. "You know the palace's sky tunnels better than anyone. We can use them to get close without being seen." It was risky. One wrong move, and they could be caught in open air between enemy ships. But Lyra didn't hesitate this time. "I'll take you there," she said firmly. The flight to the command ship, they slipped into a hidden launch chamber beneath the palace gardens. Inside was a small, fast skimmer, craft normally used for transporting diplomats. Cale quickly modified its shields with parts from his wrist device, making it harder to track. They shot into the air, weaving between the spires of Zifra's city. Enemy ships roared above them, but the skimmer's small size allowed it to pass unnoticed. Lyra guided Cale through a narrow sky tunnel that curved through crystal canyons. "This leads directly behind the fleet," she explained, when they emerged. The command ship loomed, ahead, massive and black, with glowing red lines pulsing along its hull. Cale's jaw tightened. "We get in, plant the charges, and get out. No second chances." Inside the beast docking silently, they slipped into the command ship's maintenance bay. Enemy soldiers patrolled the halls, but Cale moved like a shadow. Taking them down quietly before they could sound the alarm, Lyra stayed close. Amazed by how calm he remained even deep inside enemy territory, they reached the central control core, a massive glowing sphere of red energy. This was the heart of the ship. Cale handed Lyra a small device. "Press this when I say so, then we run." He placed charges around the core. The hum of the ship grew louder, as if it sensed the danger. "Now," Cale shouted. Lyra pressed the button. The charges activated, flashing blue. Alarms screamed through the ship. They sprinted back to the skimmer, enemy soldiers chasing them. Blaster fire lit up the corridors. Cale took a hit to his shoulder, but kept moving. The explosion and victory the moment they cleared the ship. Massive explosion lit up the sky. The command ship split in two, fire spilling into the clouds. The rest of the enemy fleet hesitated, their formation breaking apart. From the palace, King Vorin saw the explosion and raised his voice. "They've done it." Push them back. Xiphrin guards charged forward, regaining ground. Without leadership, the enemy ships retreated into the clouds, vanishing as quickly as they had come. Aftermath: the city was damaged, but it still stood. The people of Zifra filled the streets, cheering for their defenders. Cale stood on the palace balcony, his arm bandaged. Lyra stood beside him, her face filled with pride. King Vorin approached them. "You have saved my people," he said to Cale, "and you have shown my daughter the truth about humans." Lyra smiled, looking at Cale. "Father, perhaps humans are not so frightening after all." Cale chuckled softly. "I'm glad you think so, for the first time." Lyra reached out her hand to him, not in fear, but in gratitude. He took it, and together they looked out over the city they had fought to protect.